Aloha and welcome. I'm Dr. Catherine Taketa-Wong, and I'm very glad to be with you for today's very important Facebook Live event. Today, we are going to be talking about a very important therapy and some of the amazing things that we have seen with it. I have with me Janet Edgehill, and we're going to be talking about this therapy called Spelling to Communicate, or S2C for short, that has finally given her son a voice. Now, some people are unable to speak at all or have very limited communication ability. So, for example, some children with autism or Down syndrome have difficulty communicating verbally. And in many of these cases, they understand completely what is being said, and there is a lot that they want to say, but their brain can have difficulty with motor movements, with the muscles of speech, to enable them to be able to speak like how most other people speak. And just imagine how deeply frustrating and painful it would be to understand what others are saying, but then have no way to respond. So Janet will share the incredible story of her son, beginning with the S2C process of breaking down communication into very simple steps. The system starts with stencils of different letters, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail in terms of how it works. And so we'll get started in a moment. I just wanted to pause and let anyone know who's joining us who is not familiar with naturopathic medicine or what I do, that I am a naturopathic doctor and licensed acupuncturist. And I regularly remind my patients that the notion that we are made up of parts, like some kind of robot, is misguided. It's really important to remember that the body is a single organism, so everything is connected to and affects everything else. And it's really a part of a whole body approach to health. So, and now this is important, just remembering that because every aspect of our body is connected, getting the nutrients that we need is a foundation for a healthy life. But yet in the United States, fewer than 20% of conventional medical schools require any courses in nutrition. Of those 20%, the typical offerings total fewer than 25 hours. So that's 25 hours in 4 years, at a time when most of our chronic diseases are food related. So naturopathic doctors like myself typically receive 155 hours of training in nutrition in medical school. So we are trained to educate and guide patients to build their physical and emotional health from the inside. So while I attended a 4-year medical school, just like medical doctors, and ordered lab tests, write prescriptions and such, I approach treatment comprehensively that includes all aspects of a person's health, emotional and physical. And that is why my patient visits are 1 hour, not just 10 or 15 minutes. And it is a partnership between me and my patients. And I think that the spelling to communicate therapy is another example of really trying to look at the whole person and see what kinds of things really need to be brought in so that patients with special needs who have difficulty with speaking or being able to communicate really are able to be given the tools that they need to be able to have the most fulfilling life. And if you have a health condition or any questions that you would like to talk with me about, you can contact our office to schedule a free phone consultation. There's no charge because I don't take new patients without reviewing their situation first and coming up with a plan to help them get better. And all of the contact information is on our Facebook page. So I'm very happy to welcome Janet Edgehill. Janet's son, Ryan, is a patient, and we're going to be talking about spelling to communicate, what it is, and how it works, and then get into Janet's experience with her son and how he's doing. So Janet, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your, joining us and sharing your time and experience of what Ryan has been able to do and achieve. So I just wanted to first start out by asking, how did you find out about spelling to communicate, or S2C?
Well, I'm going to put a plug in for J.B. Handley's book, Underestimated, an Autism Miracle. This is really what turned me onto it. Those of us in the autism community, we're familiar with JB. He's been on national television many times. And he wrote this book, how he was in contact with another mom in the autism community and how she met this force of nature, amazing woman, Elizabeth Vossler, who runs a therapy center in Western Virginia, and how she was using a means that's frequently used with stroke victims after they lose their ability to communicate. And that's by poking through stencils, letterboards, or for pointing to letters in order to communicate. And you mentioned about how frustrating it must be to not be able to communicate. In fact, stroke victims will tell you that even more so than losing their ability, their range of motion, losing the ability to communicate is the most devastating thing that happens after a stroke if they're not able to recover that. So you can imagine how frustrated our children are. And JV's son, Jamie, was very frustrated, very self-injurious, was injuring others as well. And I've seen that with my own son, or I did. And that's all changed. So when I learned about this, and I invited Elizabeth Vossler to come out, just like on a Hawaii vacation and stay in my house. And while she was here, she worked with my son. And I thought, oh, sure, he functions like a 2-year-old. The DOE experts have told me for years that he can't really learn much. I should be grateful that when they smeared applesauce on his face, he wiped it off. He had that much awareness. So this is where I was coming from. And so when she first worked with Ryan and she read a lesson about aircraft carriers and she asked questions, I was absolutely shocked. I mean, she showed him what to do and then he just immediately started spelling. And he hasn't stopped since.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just amazing. And looking at this, so can you tell us a little bit about giving us a basic overview in terms of spelling to communicate, what it is and how it works?
Well, I think what's important to understand is what's going on in our children's brains. So, and it's important to know that in the human brain, speech, which is the articulation of sound, and language, which is the how we understand those sounds, they're in separate areas of the brain. So Broca's area is where we have speech, and Wernicke's area in the temporal lobe is where we process language. So all our thoughts and ideas are up here. Now they're connected by something called the arcuate fasciculus, which also connects to the parietal lobe and to the sensory motor cortex and the primary motor cortex. And so this is think of it as a bundle of wires. It's white matter in the brain, it's axons. And so as we learn things, right, we have myelination occurs, right? Now that's what we usually we call it muscle memory. If I throw the ball 100 times, I'm going to get pretty accurate, right? And we call it muscle memory, but that's actually where myelination has occurred. So in our kids with autism,
And I'll just
our kids
stop
with
you
Down.
really quickly. So myelination, I mean, because most people don't know what myelination is. So
Oh,
myelination is like basically there's this this wrapping that
Insulation, white
goes,
matter.
yeah, that goes around the nerves, and myelination helps those processes with different things that our brain has to do. It helps those pathways to really get formed and to be able to happen quicker. So just so that people know.
Okay. So in our kids, the arcuate fasciculus is not properly developed, is not properly myelinated. And so these messages are not getting from the important areas of the brain, like the motor, for example, but we say these kids are apraxic. And so what Elizabeth Vossler, what Evie would say was when we tell our kids to do something and they don't do it, we think, oh, they don't have any comprehension or they don't want to do it, but she would say it's not an issue of I don't understand. It's not an issue of I don't want to. It's an issue of I can't make my body do what I want it to do. And that for me with my child, and it's always shocking to me because my kid can rollerblade, he can skateboard, he can ride a bike, but yet, yet he, when we take him to motor class, we see that he really can't necessarily control his body. But what spell to communicate does, so when we're talking about speech and writing and in fact eye movements, we're talking about very, very fine motor movements. And our kids generally have deficits there, right? So what spell to communicate does is it takes the fine motor of this and speech and it puts it into the shoulder and they're poking through letters or pointing at letters. And so this moves it into the gross motor. And of course, like anything else, it myelinates and it becomes part of muscle memory. But our kids are not tested properly, right? I mean, And it's as if I were to, tape your mouth shut and tie your hands behind your back. And then I say, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. And when you can't, I say, oh, okay, Catherine's pretty slow.
Mhm.
This is what happens with my son. And my son, now that he can spell, in fact, says that he thinks his teacher thinks he doesn't listen and that he can't learn. And that's really sad for me. Yeah, it's very sad. Unfortunately, pushing past the dogma. I mean, this is a huge paradigm shift, for
Mhm.
educators.
Yeah.
They think they know your kids and what they're capable of doing. And once you see them in action, you realize these kids are really, really smart. I'm just blown away, every time his therapist works with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen a lot of autism therapies over the years. You have too,
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's not very often that I've really been, I would say, like really, really impressed by a therapy. But, I just have to say, I have been completely blown away by what I have seen with spelling to communicate. A number of patients, of mine, including Ryan, that um, I've worked with for many years, and maybe we've seen other things improve, and I have seen, definitely a number of children who've been able to improve in communication. But there are some children where even when I've done all of these medical treatments, they're still having difficulty being able to speak verbally, and I realize now, that the missing piece is really just the difficulty with those motor movements, the movements of those really tiny muscles of speech. There's many, many different muscles, and it's very, very complex. And long story short, I mean, I've seen some patients where I've worked with them for years, and maybe they are still unable to verbally, say one or two or three words together. And then now they're just like, with spelling to communicate, they're spelling out whole sentences and paragraphs, and we're finding out how brilliant they are. And
Exactly.
the mother of one of she's got two boys with autism, and she said that with spelling to communicate now, they're looking at her like, yeah, mom, you finally got it. You finally get it, like how to communicate with us. um
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, so
Ryan says his therapist Renee Deepering, she asked him, "Do you like your spelling lessons?" And he spelled out, "I love them very much because now I can communicate." So it's very important. It's very
yeah.
important, and
And
it's a lifesaver too. I mean, what do you do if your child's in pain and you don't know where it hurts, or you don't know if they're
right.
sick, you don't know what's going on? You have a child screaming on the floor. Do they hurt? Are they frustrated?
Hmm.
There's of course all other things that they attribute this to. Are they mentally ill?
Right.
But I have to tell you, in doing this, I don't even know what intellectual disability means anymore. I don't
Hmm.
know if it really exists. I think that we've been too quick to shoehorn these kids. I tell people my son goes to school and puts the blue bear in the blue box, and he adds numbers on his fingers, and yet I watch him with spell to communicate, and I have to check his answers. He's truly brilliant.
And
But I also want to make sure that you realize, though, and I know I said it at the beginning, but I drink espresso and I talk fast. It's worked great with the Down syndrome children as well. We're
hmm.
seeing amazing things come out of them. And I have a friend who says that her son, Brady, who's 19, he has spelled out that it's his life's mission to make sure the world knows that Down syndrome is not an intellectual disability.
Yeah. And
So, and the same thing with autism. Does that mean you could not have that as a comorbid condition? Of course, but by itself, autism, Down syndrome, many of these conditions that we once thought these children were profoundly, excuse me, Megan, sorry, I had a kid interrupt, that were profoundly retarded, we find these children are actually very, very bright.
yeah. Can you share with us a little bit about what things were like in terms of Ryan's ability to be able to communicate before he started spelling to communicate, and then what things are like now for him?
Well, Ryan he speaks minimally, and he would be what I would call an unreliable speaker. So much of what they spend doing this time in school, and I don't want to put down the teachers who work with them or the DCBAs or anything like that, but it produces a rote language. If you ask Brian, how are you? He'll say, I am fine, how are you? It's just a bunch of sounds that don't necessarily mean anything in the moment to him. Mm-hmm. Does he know what "how are you" means? Yes, he does. But he knows that this is like a Pavlovian response. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? It doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And it's much like anything. And his speech can be somewhat echolalic, but it's which is a part of learning to actually speak. But it's not really productive language. It's not really communication. It's very rote.
Right.
So
and echo, and
before
just,
this,
and just so I can explain it a little bit for viewers who may not know what echolalia is. So echolalia is when children or adults, when you say something, then they echo or they say back, what you just said. So for example, and so, yeah, like you mentioned, echoing is an important part of learning speech. But we see for many children on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, that, for example, you might ask them, how was your day today? And then they might say, day today, and so then people think that they don't understand what you said, right? But then we're finding out in actuality they do. So,
yes.
Yeah.
They understand very well, and in my son's case, I think he actually has an eidetic, or what you would call a photographic memory, and as well as an echoic memory. I mean, if he hears something, it's there forever. And I think I put something on my Facebook page about him responding to, "Hey, do you know what the basic accounting equation is?" When his therapist asked him that on a lark, and he, he spelled it right out. Assets equals equity plus liabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to even think about it. I mean, he's incredible. He's so smart, and he knows so many things. And I think that all these kids have such gifts. They have amazing gifts. And I feel like it's my mission, like Brady has a mission, I have a mission too. I want to make sure as many people know about this as possible. Parents and educators, first responders, whatever, they all need to know that these kids are in there. And they hear you when you're talking about them. So remember that. They understand you. They may not be able to speak back, but they understand you. And these kids, once they are more open with their speech, with their spelling, they will tell you that sitting there listening to people talk about them as though they were, not even there, and saying, things that were, unkind. It was there, and it sat with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think a big take home is just letting people know, if there are children that have autism or Down syndrome, or, you think that they're intellectually disabled, just talk to them just normally, as if they're, they're a normal child, or a neurotypical child their age, or, if they're an adult, just talk to them like an adult.
That's also made a huge difference in my relationship with Ryan. Mm-hmm. I talked to him like he was a toddler. You want to go with mommy to the store? Come on. I talked to him like that. Now I talk to him like he's any 14-year-old kid. I'm like, hey, pick that mess up. Yes. I don't go, oh, poor baby. So it's made a big difference. Him not being treated like a toddler has made a big difference in our relationship.
Yeah. And I remember, before I would, before I knew about spelling to communicate, or in the office, then maybe I'd hear him say, like, all done, bye-bye,
That's a motor loop, yeah.
Or, yes. or things like that, right? And then I remember going to the presentation where Ryan was there, and Elizabeth Vossler, the founder of the therapy, was there, and all the parents and people were there at the presentation, and Ryan was up, in front of everyone, and then Elizabeth Vossler asked him, she said, what do you want these people here to know? What do you want the parents to know about spelling to communicate? And then I remember he spelled out, he said, I want you to have a lot of hope, and I want you to know that the world is wrong about me. And I just started crying. I just totally lost it.
The men were crying too.
Yeah, and it's just so amazing to see all the things that are coming out. I mean, they're able to communicate in completely grammatically correct full sentences. Parents who didn't think that their children knew how to even spell or read, and we're finding
Hmm.
out that these children actually can spell and read very, very well, and they have
Yes. Hmm.
some of these children or young adults are now going on to college, and I heard there's one person who's
Graduate
even
school,
going on to
law
law
school,
school. I you
exactly.
know and these are individuals
Hmm.
that they may be non-speaking, they may not be speaking verbally, but using this therapy, then they're able to spell out what they want to say. And some people go on and then start to use an iPad app where they can type in the things that they want to say, and then it verbalizes it for them. uh,
Hmm.
and I also have to say that I've seen a number of individuals where they've already tried other kinds of iPad communication devices and things like that. And I mean, certainly they can help some children, but I've also seen some children where they've already tried those and they haven't really been able to get, you know, very far with that, haven't really seen much improvement in their ability to communicate. And then with spelling to communicate, it's just like it's just like opening up, it's like throwing the doors open, and then they're
Exactly.
able to use this. So,
Well, regarding those assistive communication devices, so Ryan uses one at school, and it's kind of senseless, but he's figured it out. It's okay. But there is a young adult. He's 29. His name is Gregory Tino, and he has a YouTube channel, and I just find it amazing. And he has one presentation or a video called My Letterboard Life, and then he explains how those assistive communication devices are somebody else's choices. Do you want pancakes or waffles? Well, maybe I want, Cheerios, and that's not on there. So he
mm,
explains that then he can make his own decisions, and he can, clearly identify what it is he's trying to say. And just, I believe that Gregory discovered this when I think he was 24. So this is not just for young children and
mm-hmm,
babies. They're all in there. The
yeah,
sooner you get them out, the better. So,
mm-hmm, yeah, yeah.
and so some people do ask, well, are there practitioners in our area? We do have three phenomenal practitioners on island right now. We have Nikki Johnson. I think Nikki is full up now, and she has a child with Down syndrome, and she's very good. She was a BCBA. I'm not sure she's doing that anymore. Molly Gella,
Well,
and
I
she's
actually
not.
talked to her just the other day, and she said that she actually isn't full. She said she can still
Oh,
accept new
okay.
clients.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay. All right. Because she was offering some overflow over to my therapist, Brian's therapist, I should say, to Renee. And Renee was a school teacher, and so I see a lot of a lot of good experience there. With when she's working with Ryan, she's done a phenomenal job with him. So, yeah, but we have three therapists on island, and this is something you can train to do worldwide, to become a therapist or to become a communication regulation partner, to work with your own child or other children. And it's offered over Zoom. And Elizabeth Vossler, she's come out here to Hawaii since to work with our practitioners in training who are now our practitioners. And she's in South Africa this week working with people training out there. So she's she's very, very passionate about what she does, and she wants the kids of the world to have this capability, and so do I.
yeah. And we will be posting links for our viewers. We will be
Okay.
posting links to the Hawaii Autism Foundation page that talks about spelling to communicate, has some videos that are showing individuals that are using spelling to communicate. And then it also has, on that link, it has information for the contact information for the therapists in Hawaii
Okay.
that do this therapy. So we will be putting that up, and we'll be putting on a link as well for the link for if people are interested in becoming a therapist or getting trained in this therapy. So we will be putting those links up as well so that people can look at those and get more information.
Yeah, it
Um,
would be especially good if we could get somebody in the Mililani North Shore area, or
yeah, yeah.
as well as maybe the Waianae Coast or the leeward side of the island. I think Somali works in Eva area, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
she's out that way, but that's still kind of a haul to go all
right.
the way. So
Yeah.
yeah, it would be great if we could get the whole island covered and get
Yeah,
our
and
kids.
also our neighbor islands too. There is a
There is a
practitioner.
therapist on Maui. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So we can put up some of that information. She did share that we could share her contact information as well. So, yeah. And how long has Ryan been doing spelling to communicate therapy now?
When the last cohort started and our three ladies, Renee, Molly, and Nikki were involved, then Renee was using him as practice. And so she started working with him. So I guess probably all total about 9 months, maybe.
Yeah,
You know.
that's great.
And yeah, he's coming along and he's on the way to open communication. He gets some open thoughts out, but he's not fully open yet.
Yeah, and then when you say open, meaning really being able to just fully communicate all the things that he
Yeah, to
wants to
fully
be able
communicate
to
his thoughts. So,
say.
so when a spell to communicate lesson first consists of, they'll read a paragraph and then they'll say spell whatever car, and then and that's to get the motor going. And then once the motor is going, they'll ask questions that were in the text, and then semi-open that might have more than one correct answer. They can choose, and then of course as they move to open, where how do you feel about the price of tea in China, and then they can respond like that.
Yeah.
And then that's when you first start really getting a glimpse of your child, when they get to the open questions. And that's just, it's a gift. I can't even tell you. It's such a gift to be able to communicate with your child, or have your child communicate with you. I communicate with my child constantly. I'm a mother and I nag, but hearing my child communicate his thoughts with me, mind blown. I'll remember the first thing I heard him, or I saw him spell, I should say, was when Elizabeth Fossler was here last November, I believe it was. And she did a lesson about opera with him. And she asked him at the end, what would an opera about you be about, Ryan? And he poked out, an opera about me would be about having a voice so I can truly communicate. And I was on the floor. I mean, I'd never heard anything any of his thoughts before. And it just gets better and better, really. He's quite a character.
Yeah.
And now I know that.
Yeah. Any other things that you want to share about things that have come out that he's been able to communicate or share? In this.
Oh,
I know there's like so many things
so
now.
just learning what his interests are. So here's another thing too that I was always curious about, because now that I see like the level that he can math and the whole things he understands, that he knows, that he's picked up. Why does he still choose to watch childish cartoons? I mean, I don't really understand that. It's like Peppa Pig, plays in my house all the time. And I just don't understand it. And, that was, of course, answered by Gregory Tino and another autistic young woman, Elizabeth Bonker, who was the valedictorian at Rollins College in May 2022. Just these, they're like old friends. They're comfortable with them. It's not that they really enjoy it. And in fact, I think, one young woman who's doing S2C, she watches a cartoon about spiders and she spelled out, I hate that expletive spider. But she just can't stop watching it. And I think, so that was interesting for us to learn. And so now we put on Khan Academy, we put on, I don't know, any educational materials we can put on for him and just have it playing, because I now also know, and I know this through Gregory Tino, that he can simultaneously follow multiple conversations, very clearly, and it's all in there. And so I'll make sure I put the History Channel on in the background, or something educational. Crash Course is another one, and just I know he's picking it all up. Even though I'm always amazed, even when Renee is doing his lessons, she'll read a paragraph and then she'll say, what was the name of something, or in what year was this, and how many years ago? I'm like, I didn't even pick all that up listening to it. I'm just, mind blown, really. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things is that people might think about spelling to communicate as a therapy for, say, individuals who are non-speaking. They don't speak at all, or maybe they're very limited speaking. But I think one thing that was really interesting to me was that Elizabeth Vossler talked about that there are some people that we call quote unquote unreliable speakers, that maybe they can speak and they're able to communicate their basic needs and wants, and they can have basic conversations. But then through the spelling to communicate, they can actually be able to communicate in a much, much richer form and communicate a lot more than they're able to verbally. So I think it's remembering that it's not just something that is only for those who are non-speaking or just maybe have a few words or things like that. That it's really something to look into, for anyone who maybe is not able to really communicate as richly as they would like to.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a real issue. My son is, although I have noticed he does actually speak more now that we're doing spell to communicate, but he's an unreliable speaker. He doesn't always say what he means and mean what he says. So I know that's an excellent point that you make. And also, I think you and I had talked about this, but there actually are studies that have been done, peer-reviewed in the medical literature, that discuss an underformed arcuate fasciculus in quote-unquote high-functioning young adults with autism. That's why sometimes if you hear somebody with Asperger's speak, and they speak in an odd prose, they talk like this, and it sounds like a robot. A lot of that has to do with the properly functioning arcuate fasciculus. And so it's an excellent point. It can help many people. Obviously, speech is a goal, that to get them to actually speak their own thoughts in their own mind, that is really a gift, and that opens up higher education, or just a whole realm of possibilities. I mean, this time a year and a half ago, I was like, wow, what am I going to do with my son? Can I teach him how to do some sort of a rote motion, and we'll sell tchotchkes or something here to tourists? I mean, I didn't know. Can we go find shells on the beach? I had no idea what he would be capable of. I know the sky's the limit now, and I can't even tell you what a burden that has taken off of my shoulders. I mean, really, I walked around, and I'm sure there are studies that show that autism moms, they have the same stress levels as combat soldiers, and our cortisol levels are all the time. You're always in a flight or fight mode in some ways, like our children are. And this is really given us just so much hope, and the future looks a lot brighter now. So
we'll wrap up, but thank you again so much, Janet. We really, really appreciate your time and sharing, being willing to share your experience. And so, definitely for our viewers, checking out those links, we'll be putting them on the post. Definitely contact therapists if you're interested in this therapy. And just remembering that it's really important to be working and with someone that you feel empowered with. And so that is a big focus, in our practice, is really taking the time to help to give people and patients the knowledge that they need to be empowered. And I think S2C, or spelling to communicate, is a really, really great example of a tool that is really all about empowerment. I think that's really what it is. So just remembering that, if you have questions or health concerns that you would like to talk with me personally about as well, I do offer a free phone consultation. There's no charge, because I don't take new patients without talking to them first, because I always want to make sure that what we do fits their needs. And then you'll find all the contact information on our Facebook page. The part that I do is really looking at some of the medical conditions that we see in many of our children with autism and trying to address those. And I'm very excited about, with some of these patients that have not been able to communicate, where they have pain or what they feel in their body, being able to actually communicate with them and be able to learn, so I can better help them, from a medical standpoint. So that is really exciting for me.
You should take the CRP training then.
Yeah.
So you can become a communication regulation partner. That's not the same thing as being a practitioner. But that would be excellent. If
okay. I didn't even know they had a training for that.
And if only more physicians were like you. I mean, really. So,
I will definitely be looking into that. So, yeah.
I hope you will. And again, we have 3 practitioners on Oahu, 1 on Maui. They're all very, very good. So, I've seen them all in action, and they're all wonderful. You can't go wrong. So I'm actually probably going to create my own website, just because I want to get this word out to everybody.
I've been telling pretty much all of my patients, with special needs about this, because it's just been amazing. And then the last thing I want to mention for our viewers too is that we do have an online supplement store where 100% of the proceeds go towards helping children with special needs. With their medical treatment at our office. And so it's our online supplement store, and it's available at drtaketa-wong.com. And then we'll put the link in the post with this video as well. So we do provide a 20% discount. All the products there are third-party tested to ensure quality. But again, 100% of the proceeds from that online supplement store go towards a fund to help children at our office with the cost of their care when there's financial needs. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Janet. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you for our Facebook live viewers again in 2 weeks. Aloha.
Aloha.